We are going to talk about DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. DHCP is automatic management, and we're going to discuss the basics, the components and processes, the communication process. Then we're going to do activity 4.1, which is installing DHCP server role. The basics. The DHCP basics are a layer 4 protocol. It uses UDP, ideal for networks running different platforms, and it's beneficial to managing a TCP/IP network. The layer 4 protocol, it means that it's on the transport layer of the OSI model. This is defined by the request for comment 2131. It uses UDP, which is User Datagram Protocol. DHCP clients use UDP port 68 and DHCP servers use UDP port 67. DHCP can be used on heterogeneous networks, which is networks that don't run Microsoft operating systems or their devices, or legacy Microsoft clients that use older. All of these do support DHCP. It manages the TCP/IP network, which is Transmission Control Protocol / Internet Protocol. It's flexible in that it allows you to change IP addresses easily, and scalable in that it manages the IP addressing. So you can go from having 5 clients to 25 clients and still be able to give out IP addresses. It's centralized because it stores the IP addresses and configurations in one single location, and it is automatic. It automatically distributes the IP information to the clients. This keeps you from having to put it in manually. Let's talk about the components and processes. Components of DHCP are leases, scopes, reservations, options, and relay agents. First, the lease. The lease defines the amount of time that an IP address is loaned. It acts, as the book says, a placeholder. It removes that address from the pool. In the lease, you will find the DHCP client name, the IP address, the MAC address, and the expiration date and time. And your duration is usually however long the board policy is set for each lease. Default durations are 8 days for wired and 6 hours for wireless. A scope is a range of IP addresses and related configuration information available by request from a DHCP client. The range of available IP addresses offer from that range. Your reservation is where you assign a specific IP address without static configuration. DHCP will take the MAC address of the client and will store it, but every time that MAC address asks for an IP address, it gives the same one. Next is options. Are basic settings that a client needs to communicate on the network. This is not just the IP address, but the subnet mask, the default gateway, the primary and secondary DNS servers, the primary and secondary WIN servers, if they have it, and the DHCP lease expiration. The relay agent converts DHCP requests to unicast packets from clients to server on a routed network. Routers will not send broadcast. DHCP requests are broadcast. The router will not forward the request if the server is on a different network. DHCP relay agent converts the request as a unicast so the router can then forward that. DHCP communication process. Processes are the message types, the initial lease request, lease renewals, and changing subnets. The message types are DHCP discover, DHCP offer, DHCP request, DHCP ACK, DHCP NAC, DHCP decline, DHCP release, and DHCP inform. The discover is where the client broadcasts a message to locate a DHCP server. Offer is where the server responds to the discover message, which would offer the configuration information. Then the request is where the client broadcasts a message to the server to accept its offer. Then the DHCP ACK is a message in response to the server confirming that the client's IP address. DHCP NAC is a response from the DHCP server declining the client's request, and the decline is where the client declines an offered IP address. The release is where the client gives the IP address back and ends its lease. DHCP inform is where if a client already has an IP address, it will send its local configurations back to the server. The initial lease request. This is where clients make a request if they don't have a current lease on a scope. It will send out a DHCP discover message. It'll wait for 1 second, and if it doesn't receive a response, it rebroadcasts the request at intervals of 9, 13, and 16 seconds. If it doesn't get any response, it will assign itself an automatic private IP address temporarily, and it'll retry for every 5 minutes after that. So if one or most servers respond to the client's request, they all send the DHCP offer message. The client sends the DHCP request to the right DHCP server to assign its address, and the rest of the servers are sent a DHCP decline. The client will send a DHCP acknowledgement ACK, and it'll confirm it with the inform. Lease renewals. We're going to talk about renewal time value, binding time value. The renewal time value is when a client's lease is halfway expired, it sends a request to renew the lease to the DHCP server. The binding time value is that after 87.5% lease time, or if 7/8 of lease time is expired, the client tries again to renew its lease. If it doesn't work this time, it sends out a DHCP discover broadcast again to find any DHCP server that's willing to give it an IP address. Once the client makes the request to renew its lease, the server receives this request, it sends an DHCP ACK message with the updated lease, which will include the new expiration date. Now we're going to talk about if you're changing subnets. If you move a client from one subnet to another that is using DHCP, the client will send a DHCP request to renew the lease that it currently holds. Then the new server will realize that it's asking for an IP address configuration that it can't do. So it sends a NAC, which is declining that IP address. So when the client receives the NAC, it sends out a DHCP discover message, and then that server then responds to that message and gives a DHCP offer of a different IP address. Then the client responds to the server asking it to give it the address that it needs. The server responds with a DHCP. Now we're going to do activity 4-1, which is installing the DHCP server role.